Good evening. Thanks for joining us. This is NTD Business, and I'm Paul Graney. Some Republicans sound the alarm on the Democrats' new infrastructure bill. We hear from one lawmaker who tells us you can't tax your way to prosperity. A massive ship blocks the Suez Canal, one of the most important waterways in the world. How will it impact global supply chains? And Intel expands its chip-making capacity. Its new CEO announcing plans to build 2 factories in Arizona, investing as much as $20 billion. That and much more coming up at NTD Business. Did you get your new stimmy check yet? You know what you'll spend it on? Will you just keep it instead? A new Refinitiv report finds most people will just put it in the bank. But does that defeat the purpose of a stimulus check? NTD's Phil Zoe reports.
Consumer spending makes up 70% of the U.S. economy, and the recovery depends on it. Stimulus checks should add to that, but how are people using them?
I guess kind of half save, but then we also have to, pay rent.
Fund a business that I'm starting.
I want to invest it.
I plan on paying back my student debt.
Refinitiv found that nearly half of Americans intend to put their new stimulus checks in the bank rather than spend it.
In times of recession or economic downturn, consumers tend to put a lot of their money into savings.
This is similar to what happened during the previous round of stimulus.
They are building up an emergency fund in case the pandemic goes on longer.
Another 30% want to pay down their debts, 15% want to spend it, and only 5% want to invest it. Experts worry the lack of spending will slow recovery.
A recovery in the United States going from the first and second to third quarters, it's going to be dependent on consumer spending.
While the stimulus spending may give us a blip of inflation, he believes it won't have much impact overall.
You're going to see a bit, if you will, of a 1920 roaring 20s effervescence over the next 2 quarters as the lockdowns have ended.
Refinitiv says those who are spending their stimulus checks are expected to mainly use it for living expenses, such as groceries and the electric bill. And 18% want to buy consumer goods, such as clothing, shoes, and electronics. Phil Zoe, NTD News.
That virus spending bill was passed without any Republican support. Republicans said they didn't want to support it because it contained all kinds of Democrat pet projects. But passed it was, and now some are worried that the Democrats' new infrastructure bill will be full of big government expansion and move us another step closer to socialism. Tax increases, government-funded pre-K, Green New Deal regulations are all reportedly in the pipeline. Conservatives are worried. Ask Congressman Ralph Norman if their fears are justified.
Absolutely. Socialism probably is right around the corner. Absolute socialism. I'm from the private sector. I'm a real estate developer. I'm not a career politician. The problem we've got is so many of from Biden on down to who he's put in control are career bureaucrats. They've never had a job. They've never worked in a factory. They've never had to produce income. And I was on the budget committee last year to have the trillions, the 1.9 trillion. They're talking about another, 2 trillion plus for infrastructure. No budget offsets. You just would not do this. The country is 30 trillion in debt. Every individual agency or every individual grouping from Medicare, Social Security, the items that we have by law have to fund now are about bankrupt. So this would pretty much do us in combined with the tax hikes. And it makes absolutely no sense. And it's up to us who are true conservatives to ring the bell. Government thinks they can spend our money better than we can. And it's time the public needs to know it.
And you mentioned true conservatives. Even last year, and I'll give some leeway because, of course, it was the beginning of the pandemic, but even last year, we saw very little opposition to these types of big spending bills. Do you see a kind of change in conservative values when it comes to this thing?
I think people are getting a front row seat to exactly what's happening. As an example, the 1.9 trillion so-called COVID bill, only 9% went to COVID relief. The other went to payouts to the states that support Democrats, the blue states. We've all heard about the Smithsonian and other buildings that were being funded. Nancy Pelosi's pet projects, the $350 billion that went to states that had the highest unemployment, which, if you interpret that, it's the states that mismanaged their budgets, the pension bailouts. So, I'm very concerned. I think once people know about it, and the mainstream media is not going to put the details out, which that's our job to do, and I welcome the challenge to get it out, because to have 1.9 trillion added to our deficit when under the guise of COVID is misleading, and it's something that they ought to be held accountable for, which hopefully they will happen.
You mentioned you're from the private sector, create jobs, create taxes for the government to fund a lot of these programs, whether justified or not. How are you and your peers who are creating all of these jobs, creating the prosperity in the country, feeling as you look, as you mentioned, socialism around the corner? What does it mean for you?
What it means to somebody like me who is involved, make up the House of Representatives, to ring the bells to tell people, when Joe Biden is raising the taxes like he is, we haven't seen this type tax increase since 1968. That's 52 years ago. To raise the corporate tax from 21 to 28, to raise the capital gains tax, doubling it. You can't tax your way into prosperity, and you can't tax the American people. They'll just shut down. And we've just come off the pandemic. People have been out of work. To impose this kind of tax increases, which is taking our money that we've earned and give it to the government, is going to hurt. Is going to hurt the whole country. And when Lyndon Johnson did it in '68, you had a recession, and that's what I would tell my peers and my constituents. You can't let the government just completely run everything and take all of our money. They're looking at the tax brackets move the rate up from 37 to 40%. Might as well say that's half the income for those of them making a certain, with the capital gains, those of them making over $1 million. But the whole point is it's time for us to sound the alarms, which I'm seeing. And businesses are the backbone of this country, small business particularly. We're the ones that produce the taxes that pay the first responders, the police, the fire, and that's what we've got to get back to remind the American people.
Mr. Norman, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Paul.
Another coalition of states is suing the Biden administration. Comes on top of multi-state lawsuits over pipeline cancellations and immigration policies. NTD's Allison Lee has the latest.
Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry is leading a coalition of 13 states in a lawsuit against the Biden administration. Wyoming is also filing a separate suit for the same reason.
This morning, on behalf of the state of Louisiana, I filed a suit against the Biden administration for effectively banning oil and gas activity that supports businesses, employs our workers, and also, as importantly, funds our coastal restoration projects.
A week after coming into office, President Biden signed an executive order halting oil and natural gas leases on federal lands and offshore waters. It will also launch a rigorous review of all existing leasing. Biden says this is to tackle climate change, but Landry sees it differently.
That is destroying thousands of families' livelihoods, leaves the working poor without the means to fuel their cars or to heat their homes. And then he concedes our energy policy and national security to the whims of other countries.
Attorneys general from 12 other states are joining this lawsuit. The state of Wyoming filed its own lawsuit over Biden's oil and gas halt. Landry calls it the Biden ban.
So again, this Biden ban now, we see a pattern, picks winners and losers. So it's okay for drilling to occur on Native American lands, but it's not okay for Americans to be able to drill on federal lands, completely contradicting the administration's alleged environmental concerns.
Landry calls the Biden policy an aggressive, reckless abuse of presidential power and an attack on American energy independence. Last week, a coalition of 21 states sued Biden for halting the XL Keystone pipeline. Arizona and Texas separately sued Biden for his deportation freeze. And an alliance for oil workers sued Biden for his drilling halt in late January. Allison Lee, NTD News.
We've reached out to the Biden admin for comment on the last two stories. Stocks gave up an early gain today and actually wound up mostly lower on Wall Street today. Tech stocks weighed on the tech-heavy NASDAQ. The Dow fell 3 points, 0.01%. S&P 500 was down 21 points, 0.55%. The NASDAQ dropped 266 points, 2.01%. The bond market was relatively quiet for a change. The 10-year Treasury yield fell a little to 1.61%. Crude oil prices actually rose today. Remember, they fell a lot recently, over 6% today up. Supply chain disruption and a major water wave. Details on that in just a moment. Were you one of the ones to strike it lucky on Bitcoin and now you don't know what to spend all your money on? Remember Elon Musk promised you could buy a Tesla with Bitcoin soon? Now you can. Musk tweeted today that Tesla has started taking Bitcoin as payment. The crypto rose more than 4% on the news. Musk says any Bitcoin received will be held as Bitcoin, not converted into regular currencies. Tesla, of course, bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin earlier this year. And then a win for Arizona. Intel says it will build 2 new chip factories there. Its new CEO is trying to turn the American chip maker around during a global chip shortage. NTD's Patrick Hayden reports.
California-based chip maker Intel says it will build 2 new major chip plants in Arizona.
Today is the first step.
It says the expansion will cost $20 million and create 3,000 permanent jobs. Intel also says it will act as a foundry. That means it will make chips for other companies. It suggested Amazon, Google, Microsoft and Qualcomm could be customers. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey called Intel's growth plan the largest private sector investment in state history and a victory for U.S. manufacturing. The news comes as multiple industries face a global chip shortage, and Intel struggles to take back its dominant role in the chip-making industry. Intel's new CEO, Pat Gelsinger, says there could be more construction announced later this year in the US, Europe, and other countries. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
That global chip shortage is denting GM's production plans again. The car maker will now need to extend production cuts at 2 plants in North America. Downtime at one Michigan plant is extended by 2 weeks. It's also idling an assembly plant in Missouri for about a week as well. Wouldn't say how much volume it'll lose, but hopes to make up for it later in the year. But a spokesman said it could shave up to $2 billion off this year's profit. Car makers are scrambling for chip supplies. Last year they cancelled orders as plants shut down, but now they have to compete with consumer electronics companies, which are seeing high demand as people stay at home. Recent fire at a major Japanese chip maker's plant has made the shortage even worse. And more supply chain problems with chaos in Egypt. One of the world's most important waterways is blocked and has been for a few days. Today, 8 tugboats tried to move one of the world's largest containers that's stuck. Soraya Ali reports.
One of the largest shipping containers in the world, a 400-meter and 200,000-ton vessel, has run aground in the Suez Canal, blocking one of the most important waterways in the world. Around 12% of trade by volume passes through the canal, which connects Europe and Asia. It's also a major source of hard currency for Egypt. Cargo trucks were lining the port entrance and ships were being diverted to an older canal after the vessel called the Ever Given ran aground on Tuesday morning. The Canal Authority says the mishap occurred because of bad weather. 8 tugboats were attempting to free the canal on Wednesday morning, but some delays to shipping are expected.
BSM says all the crew are safe and accounted for, and there are no reports of injuries or spillage. GameStop shares fell 34% today. Probably not a great day for the Wall Street's bet crowd to hear that online trading app Robinhood plans to go public. It's confidentially filed for an initial public offering. Robinhood was at the center of a battle this year between those retail traders and institutional investors over companies like GameStop and AMC Entertainment. At the height of the trading frenzy, Robinhood restricted trading of the stocks. They said it was to appease regulators, but others accused them of shielding hedge funds that the retail investors were betting against, and winning at the time. Robinhood did not disclose the size of its IPO or where it plans to list, but CNBC reported earlier that the company was planning on listing on the Nasdaq. A confidential IPO filing lets a company privately file a registration statement with the SEC without immediately divulging financial details. Online shopping platform Shopify has had an incredible year. Its share price is up over 220% from last March, and its revenue almost doubled in 2020. So NTD's Evelyn Lee asks, should Amazon be worried?
The pandemic forced retailers to move to e-commerce platforms, but for small businesses, the options seem limited. One of them is Amazon.
I think it is the number one platform for sellers to be on.
The numbers support his claim. According to Digital Commerce 360, Amazon represented almost 40% of all e-commerce spending in 2020. Ian Sells, CEO and founder of milliondollar-sellers.com, says Amazon is a platform that every brand owner should be on.
Amazon makes it really easy for brands to get their products in front of consumers that don't know about their brand.
He says Amazon helps retailers lead customers to the right product because the algorithm knows what they're searching for. But while Amazon offers a lot of convenience for businesses, some brands think the trade-off just isn't worth it. Hope Katz-Gibbs, founder and president of Incandescent Inc., says she primarily uses Shopify.
It gives you the opportunity to do all kinds of stuff, and I don't feel like I have that same kind of flexibility on it.
Eunice Bune, CEO of Material, told the Wall Street Journal she doesn't want to give up on vital customer data, like email addresses, or give Amazon all the control over returns and complaints. The customer experience is too important for her, and Gibbs agrees.
The customer experience is essential for anything that Incandescent does, and having that flexibility around Shopify has been just fantastic.
Another pain point sellers on Amazon experience are the high fees. Depending on the product, Amazon charges up to 45% of the sales price.
I get an order for one book, usually at a time. I have to ship it to Amazon, and then they ship it out for me. So they take 50%, and then I have to pay for the shipping.
Amazon has faced criticism in the past for abusing its position and squeezing businesses for their money. More recently, for using data from third-party sellers against the sellers themselves. But according to the Wall Street Journal, Shopify itself is a growing giant in e-commerce. The company is currently valued at around $130 billion and is building its own network of fulfillment warehouses.
Amazon has some challenges coming up. Shopify is probably one of the biggest ones. If they can partner with a fulfillment network or something like that, they're going to be able to grow really fast.
But according to the president of Shopify, its business model sets it apart from Amazon. According to him, Shopify is only successful when its merchants are. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
The United States Postal Service is basically broke. Now, the U.S. Postmaster says he has a new 10-year plan to save the Postal Service. He's focused on fixing $160 billion in losses, wants to break even by 2023. USPS hopes Congress will help it move to an electric vehicle fleet. It also wants to remove the retiree health benefit pre-funding that's sapping post office funds. It wants to retain employees and upgrade infrastructure for better efficiency, but some politicians are criticizing the rollbacks the agency plans to make. First-class mail will now take longer to arrive, and post office hours will be cut. Hurt the service. Still to come. Businesses are offering perks for showing proof you got the vaccine, but security experts warn be careful when showing your vaccine card. And Disney delays the release of its latest Marvel superhero movie, Black Widow. How do theaters feel about another delay? That and more after the break.
if you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too-big-to-fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever, just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled, and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
The Federal Trade Commission is warning about a new scam involving a bogus CCP virus vaccine survey. The FTC says it's just a trick to steal your money and personal information. If you get an email or a text like these shown on the screen, stop, it's a scam. The FTC says scammers are sending emails and texts asking people to complete a survey about vaccines. The surveys promise a free reward but ask you to pay for the shipping. The Commission says no legitimate survey will ask for your credit card or bank account number. So if you do get an email or text you're not sure about, don't click any links, don't open any attachments. Also, don't give your credit card, bank account, or personal information to someone who contacts you out of the blue. Businesses across America are increasingly leaning into the vaccination effort. Some are offering a range of freebies and incentives to customers who show proof of getting that CCP virus shot. Krispy Kreme says it'll offer a free original glazed donut every day for the rest of the year to customers who show a vaccine card. Some local food and drink retailers have launched similar tactics to promote vaccinations. Security experts, though, are warning customers to not be careless with the information on that vaccine card, currently the only proof of vaccination. Vaccine cards contain sensitive information that bad actors could exploit. Experts urge people to be mindful when flashing the cards and definitely not share photos of them on social media. No selfies with your vaccine card. And as England slowly reopens, the government is looking at whether people should have to provide proof of vaccination against the CCP virus through one of those vaccine passports. Some warn the idea brings legal and ethical challenges. Here's NTD's Jane Worrell with the story.
With more than 28 million people in the UK receiving their first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, a parliamentary committee is reviewing the idea of a vaccine passport that would prove you've had the jab. It could give people more freedom and access to venues. The former Brexit secretary, though, has concerns that a domestic vaccine passport system would break the law.
Firstly, the impact of this would be discriminatory. Under the law, it would be indirectly discriminatory, and that is illegal. What this proposal does is, in effect, coerce those people, and that's also against a number of international conventions.
Also giving evidence to the committee on Tuesday was the director of civil liberty group Big Brother Watch, who similarly raised concerns about privacy and discrimination.
A high-tech company says one day soon, cyclists won't have to worry about flat tires. The smart tire company is showing off its metal tire. These tires don't need air to stay filled and can be used on roads, gravel, or mountains. The tires use an electric memory alloy that holds its initial shape. They work like the tires roaming around on Mars on NASA's Curiosity rover. In fact, Smart Tire fully admits the space agency's technology made this possible. The tires could be available as early as 2022, but it's not clear how much they'll cost. Disney is delaying the release of Marvel Studios' film Black Widow by 2 months until July. Theater operators had hoped the blockbuster release would kick off a summer blockbuster season in early May and draw crowds back. But Flora Bradley Watson reports otherwise.
Any hopes that this year's round of blockbuster films would kickstart the summer movie season have been dashed.
Before I was an Avenger.
Disney announced on Tuesday it was again delaying the release of Marvel's Black Widow by 2 months to July. The film, starring Scarlett Johansson, will also be offered simultaneously on its Disney Plus streaming service. Shares of AMC Entertainment, the world's largest cinema operator, tumbled 16% after the announcement. As part of a massive shake-up of its movie slate, Disney is delaying a whole handful of films, including Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, as well as Free Guy.
I really want to kiss you.
In another blow for box office sales, the company is focusing more on its streaming service. Pixar's animated coming-of-age adventure Luca will launch exclusively on Disney+. And Cruella, which hasn't been delayed, will also be a simultaneous release. Other Hollywood studios have made similar moves to Disney. Warner Brothers is offering all of its 2021 theatrical films on the HBO Max streaming service on the same day. It has, however, agreed to keep to a more traditional release pattern in 2022. But like Paramount and Universal, it will be reducing the number of days films are shown exclusively in cinemas.
As the latest business updates for today, you can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox. It's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, it's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.